Oh no, I'd never shop at Tesco. Darling, please, that's disgusting. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Business Blaze. In this one, the international failures of Tesco. This might sound boring to some of you who don't know what Tesco is. I know a lot of people who watch this channel are Americans. Tesco is an absolute weapon of a business in the UK. It failed in America. I believe it was called Fresh and Easy in the US, and it completely failed. This is a fascinating story about how Tesco has just completely succeeded in some places and utterly failed in others. There's kind of these weird parallels. We did a video on Fordlandia where Henry Ford tried to build a village in the Amazon rainforest, one of my favorite stories ever. There's some similar elements. You'll see. Thank you, Danny, for putting this together, and let's get into it. When a young Jack Cohen first started selling surplus groceries from a modest market stall in the East End of London in 1919, that's exactly 100 years ago. Happy birthday, Tesco. He probably had little idea that he was taking the first steps into launching the world's third biggest retailer, Tesco. Is that really possible? Third biggest? Even though it hasn't succeeded in America or China? That's amazing. Is that true? Well, this article from Investopedia from this year, but a few months ago, says it's number 5. I guess there's different ways you can measure it, but either way, 5 is absolutely huge for a company that doesn't have a huge international presence. On their very first day at the market, he spent a total of £4 on groceries and cheerfully walked away with a mighty profit of £1 British. I'd say that's pretty good. Isn't that like a 20% margin? Pretty solid. Fast forward, about 100 years or so, during which time Jack Cohen's band spearheaded the supermarket revolution, and Tesco is now the market leader of groceries in the UK with 3,400 stores scattered across Britain, a 28% share of the market, and an annual revenue of £63 million. It really is dominant. There was an amazing statistic a few years ago, which I'm not sure if still is correct, because I know Tesco's declined a little, but it was out of every £8 spent in the UK, £1 was spent at Tesco. And they do everything. They do insurance, they do mobile phones, they do petrol, gas, they do everything. Tesco has also enjoyed some notable success and growth overseas, with a further 3,000 stores popping up across Europe and Asia over the last couple of decades. In fact, by 2004, the amount of international floor space owned by Tesco surpassed the amount in its home market for the very first time, although UK operations still accounted for over 75% of the company's revenue due to lower sales per unit overseas, as I'm sure we will soon see. But it has to be said that not all of Tesco's efforts to expand into the international market have run smoothly, and the company has become just as well known for some of its huge overseas failures, most memorably in China, Japan, and perhaps their biggest and most expensive disaster of all, America. That's the one I had in my mind. So how did one of the biggest retail giants in the world end up making such an embarrassing flop when it came to exporting the Tesco experience to certain other countries? Let's kick off with China, mainly because the answer is the simplest and can be actually summed up in just one word: club card. Well, that would normally be 2 words, but I think club card, in Tesco vernacular, is 1 word. Also, how does this lead to a failure? And who uses club card? I had a club card 3 years ago. I did all of my shopping in Tesco. I was like, I'm loyal, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna become a Tesco man. And then at the end of the year, they send me £4 in vouchers and some buy one get one free on detergent that I really didn't want. And then I never used a club card again. Tesco opened its first store in China in 2004, but it was already late to the party. Major competitors such as US corporation Walmart, which interestingly enough, I don't think there are Walmarts in the UK, had been busy planting their stakes in China for over a decade, and they'd spent this time snapping up prime locations, buying up land at low cost, and acquiring existing high-performing stores. Aggressive expansion. Tesco may have been sitting on their hands for too long, but they didn't intend to embark on a full-scale war with corporate giants who'd seized the first mover advantage. Instead, they had modest plans to take on local Chinese stores and lure away their regular customers with their secret weapon, the club card. A big hit in the UK, the Tesco... Really? The Tesco Club Card rewards loyal customers by giving them the opportunity to accrue points for every shopping trip, which are then converted into discount vouchers. Yeah, and they really it doesn't seem worth it. It really doesn't. I mean, I guess I wasn't spending a huge amount in Tesco, but maybe it wasn't £4, but it was almost not worth it. It's estimated that Tesco has no less than 17 million active Club Card users in the UK. That's 1 in every 5 people, 1 in every 4 people. However, this secret weapon turned out to be a damp fire firework for the Chinese market. Tesco had grossly overestimated the appeal of a loyalty card scheme in a culture which took a very different approach to shopping than the UK. Chinese consumers are far more likely to seek variety and bargain deals in their everyday shopping from a multitude of sources rather than expressing any preference or loyalty to one particular store. Apparently, I'm incredibly Chinese in my shopping habits. The majority of Chinese shoppers who do own loyalty cards actually own a whole stack of them in their wallets, making a bit of a mockery of the whole loyalty concept. This is something that I make fun of my wife a lot for. She's always like, oh, I got the card for this, I got the card for that. So while many Chinese customers are happy to pick up Tesco Club cards on their shopping adventures, they were never going to evolve into the creatures of habit more commonly seen in UK-style shopping, and they were never going to declare their unswerving loyalty to one store. This might be a weird quirk of British culture, because you get people, and I think most people, they'll be like, oh no, I only shop at Waitrose. And Waitrose is like a more expensive supermarket. It's very much like, oh no, I'd never shop at Tesco. Darling, please, that's disgusting. Chinese customers just prefer to shop around, and that took Tesco by surprise. I feel like some basic market research might have been in order here, Tesco. Following hugely disappointing results, Tesco eventually entered into a merger with the state-run China Resource Enterprises to form the largest food retailer in China, but with Tesco only owning a 20% stake. That's amazing. Like, how to win in China? Just partner with the government. They run everything. That seems like a really good deal. I don't know why Tesco complains. Like 20% of the largest retailer in China, with China's got like 1 billion people. Culture clash was also at the root of Tesco's problems in Japan. Oh, we're moving on. Around the same time, although they came at it from almost the exact opposite angle. When Tesco tried to introduce the UK supermarket experience into Japanese culture, they hadn't bargained on the fact that Japanese customers tend to prefer the personal touch provided by family-owned and long-established grocery stores. Yeah, that's something you can't really fake. Japanese consumers' genuinely high-quality products and amazing customer service are the key ingredients that attract long-term loyal customers. As hard as Tesco might try, it was almost impossible to replicate this style of shopping and provide such a personal customer experience with their, frankly, huge stores in which goods are piled high on the aisles and customers are rushed through to get to the checkout queues. Yeah, you can't fake like a lifetime's loyalty and a small business thing. Well, you probably can. I'm sure some companies do. The Japanese simply couldn't get on board with an approach that felt so ordinary and detached and perhaps even a little cold. The consumers couldn't be tempted away from the thriving community of local businesses, and Tesco eventually pulled out of Japan in defeat, having failed to ever capture more than 1% of the market. However, Tesco's biggest and most costly international failure was perhaps its most surprising. And that was America. Tesco were reported to have the United States. Just to be clear, I know I used to have a friend from Brazil, and he would say, like, when he introduced himself to people, they go, oh, like, where are you from? He'd be like, America. Like, because he wanted to point out, like, America's a continent. Tesco were reported to have thrown $1 billion at researching the US market before they opened their first store in Los Angeles in 2007. Probably after the Japan disaster, they were like, let's spend some money figuring out what people actually want. This figure seems a bit expensive to me. It does seem like a lot. I'd have happily charged Tesco about £50 to let them know that Americans like hamburgers, apple pies, and blueberry muffins. Fairly legit. Danny, what are you doing right for me, man? Just could be a marketing consultant. You could charge them half, and you'd still walk away with $500 million. They may well have been better off with my approach, as it's difficult to figure out how on earth they spent so much money getting it so hopelessly wrong. To be fair, they were entering a saturated market, but Tesco's cunning plan was to reposition their brand as fresh and easy. Whereas the majority of American competitors focused squarely on convenience and price, Tesco decided to deliver a distinctive healthy edge by heavily promoting convenience and fresh organic food. Like, healthy food. Not what America's famous for, is it? A trend for healthier foods and lifestyles was rippling across the UK and the rest of Europe, and Tesco felt as if they were onto a winner by pushing a feast of their successful fresh and organic products into 175 stores across the US. There was a major problem though. Americans tend to prefer fast food. They just weren't ready to buy into this health kick stuff at all, and the fresh and easy brands they were ended up wilting like a rotting cauliflower. I feel like today Americans are like more into healthy healthy food than maybe you were a little while ago, but I don't really know. I'm amazed at how much calories fits into food. Like, you can look at it, I swear, you go into a McDonald's in Europe and it's like, oh, there's not 2,000 calories for a meal. Whereas you go to America, they're like, get ready for a heart attack. There were other problems too. The choice of store locations turned out to be a catastrophic mistake. Back in the UK, Tesco had generated enormous success with their small Tesco Express stores. Tesco Express stores are amazing. The biggest thing is where you get them at a petrol station. So you pull up, you fill up your car, and before you'd have to go in and they'd have some like really expensive food that was super overpriced and not really nice and like delivered 6 days before. When Tesco Express came in and they had pretty much the same store prices as the supermarket, you could get like nice sandwiches and stuff at the petrol station. That was amazing. These were handily positioned near railway stations, bus stations, and transit hubs to pick up stacks of commuter custom. Absolutely, they were. Like, you'd be getting on a train, you'd pick up a nice sandwich at a Tesco Express. When they tried to repeat the same formula in the United States, they seem to have overlooked the fact that people in places such as California and Nevada just don't use public transport very often. So all these fresh and easy stores stuck out in the middle of nowhere just weren't picking up any footfall. Americans love to stuff their freezers with frozen food, and they like to buy coffee and freshly baked bread from their grocery stores. Tesco's fresh and easy stores, they didn't offer any of this until it was far too late to save the day. Tesco's self-checkout system seemed like a totally alien concept to Americans who, like the Japanese, prefer the idea of friendly and personal customer service over cold automation. Are there self-checkouts in the States now? I feel like there are. Last time I went there, I think I had those. I don't know, man. I'm like, if there's an automated checkout, I'll be like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm just going to use the automated checkout because then I have minimum human interaction, which is exactly how I like things. The club card idea also didn't really take off in a nation where cutout coupons and promotional flyers are still massively popular. Fresh and Easy filed for bankruptcy in 2013, and Tesco pulled out of the US market at a reported loss of over $1 billion. Well, it was definitely over $1 billion because they spent like $1 billion on market research. Their attempted expansion into America ended up being possibly the most expensive mistake that Tesco ever made. The interesting thing about this list of unfortunate international mishaps is that they all seem to be connected to the same fundamental problem. Whether we're blaming club cards, location choices, lack of personal service, or the American diet, it all boils down to a severe lack of consideration for potential cultural differences. I feel like it's not this. The American diet is not the fault. The culture's not the fault. It's Tesco's not doing the research. It doesn't work like this. Like, Tesco, why aren't you buying my healthy food? Because I'm a fat I don't want it. And then Tesco be like, oh, that's your fault. Not that guy's fault. Tesco seems happy to just take their successful UK business model and dump almost identical versions of it into locations around the world without giving enough thought to cultural sensitivities, preferences, and habits. It's like, Japan, you will love this. Love it, Japan! Nani? Even though a very close cousin like America might share the same language, almost, and many of the same cultural tastes, it's a massive oversight to make broad assumptions about the US market and underestimate its diversity and subtle differences. After spending the best part of a century dealing exclusively in the UK grocery market, you can perhaps forgive Tesco for taking a few fumbling steps in their first efforts overseas. The good news is that they appear to be learning from their mistakes. The Tesco international expansion strategy now acknowledges the need to be sensitive to local cultures. What a revelation! Instead of going into it alone in new terrain, Tesco now prefers to team up with local partners for joint ventures. Like the Chinese Communist Party. Such as Tesco Lotus in Thailand, which is a flourishing partnership with the local Thai group Charion POC fans? Maybe. The company also now appoints a high proportion of local personnel to oversee management positions, so that key decisions and strategies are now increasingly empowered with local insights and expertise. It seems that Tesco, rather than reading from the modern business handbook or an MBA course, instead went with the British East India Company strategy of forcing British culture on other people. They'll love it! Some might suggest that this is all a little too late, but every little helps. It's a nice joke. In the UK, Tesco's slogan is every little helps. So there we go, because they're cheap. I think that's what it's behind. Every little saving helps you save money. Tesco bonus facts. 5 years after opening his first market stall in 1919, Jack Hearn launched the Tesco brand in 1924. He came up with a name after buying a shipment of tea from Mr. T.E. Stockwell. He took Stockwell's initials, T.E.S., and combined them with the first two letters of his own surname, C.O., to form the word Tesco. That's random. Tesco coined the term superstore in 1968 when they opened their huge 40,000 square foot store in Crawley, West Sussex. How cool would it be to go to a huge superstore when there was nothing like that before? The company is now considered to be one of the UK's biggest landowners with a total empire of more than 68 million square feet. That's a lot of square feet. Worldwide, they now employ almost as many people as the entire population of Luxembourg. Hey Siri, what's the population of Luxembourg?
It's currently partly cloudy and 30 degrees in Prague. Expect mostly cloudy skies starting in...
Siri is utterly useless. American billionaire Warren Buffett lost a final bonus fact. American billionaire investor Warren Buffett. Love Warren Buffett. I watch interviews with Warren Buffett. He seems like such a genuinely nice dude, super down to earth, and he's also insanely rich and just unbelievably successful. But he did lose $444 million in a mere 3 months after dawdling over offloading Tesco investments during a difficult year for the company in 2014, in which the share price tumbled. He later referred to the incident as a bad mistake. Yeah, it's $500 million, Warren. But also, Warren, you don't make mistakes. You're like the, what do they call him? The sage of Utah? The oracle of Utah? Something like that. Is he from Utah? I'm not sure. This has been Business Blaze. That was the international failures of Tesco. I hope it appealed to you international audience as much as I enjoyed learning more about Tesco. If you've got suggestions for future Business Blaze episodes, leave them in the description below. Smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell. YouTube shilling over, and I'll see you next time.